Hi there, I'm Jane Butel with Chilies and Chilies, showing you how to make green chili chicken enchiladas. They are truly a huge favorite here in New Mexico. Actually, here in New Mexico, every man, woman, and child averages a bushel of green chili a year. So here you see the critical thing is the sauce, and these are the ingredients for making the sauce, which will come into action in just a second. We have the onion, fresh garlic, butter, unsalted butter, flour, salt, and cumin. And here we see the green chilies. Of course, the green chilies are the kind of the piece de resistance of the flavor, and the green chilies need to be roasted first because they have a tough outer skin that if you don't parch, it just it takes away from the flavor. So to parch them, you just place them over or under direct heat until you get some brown blisters, pretty uniform throughout around the chili, and then dip it in ice water to stop the cooking and to keep the fresh texture. And then to peel them, as soon as they're cool enough to handle, first thing you're going to want to do is you can cut off the top first, and then you will want to take the peeling off. And I like to cut them in those 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch bands. In other words, I cut them much more coarsely than the commercial canned or frozen, and I kind of think that's a good idea because it kind of gives a little signature that I made it myself. And when you go to the trouble of having fresh roasted chilies, which definitely impart a much greater flavor, you should have some little way of denoting that. So here we're just going to you can take out the seeds by using the dull side of the knife, which I just squished them out. Sometimes I don't even bother to take the seeds out because the seeds are a great source of health. They provide the unique substance capsaicin, and they also provide fiber. So here we are. We've used a heavier pan. It's a cast iron saucepan, 3-quart saucepan, and we're adding the unsalted butter, and we're just going to wait for it to melt over a medium flame, or if it's electric, you'll use a medium heat. And once the butter is pretty well melted, just add the onion, and I like to use about a 1/2 inch chop, and 1/2 inch is the line of demarcation between chopping and dicing. So if a recipe calls for diced onion, you'll want it to be cut at a 1/2 inch or larger. So once the onion becomes clear, in other words, the onion has cooked sufficiently to where it's clear, not white, then we're going to be able to add the rest of the ingredients. And actually, in a sense, you're kind of like making onion gravy or an onion white sauce, if you want to call it that. But we're adding the onion before we add the flour to make the roux. And before we add the flour, we also add fresh minced garlic. And once it just cooks a wee little bit, you don't want it to even get the least bit tan, because then it imparts a different flavor. And we're going to add the flour now. And when you add the flour, you want to stir it in very well so that you won't get any lumps and so that it'll have an opportunity to thicken the sauce. But we don't want the sauce to be very thick. It's actually kind of runny, and that's preferable so it'll soak into the corn tortillas that you use for making the enchilada. We used chicken broth here, and if you use commercial chicken broth, you want to check how salty it is before you add salt. So I hear that this is not a salty broth. It tastes like chicken. And so I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. And we'll just cook it and stir it until it gets to be, it's still a relatively thin sauce. And once it's just thickened a bit, just a little, then you can add the green chilies. You don't want to cook the green chilies too much because then you kind of defeat what you've done in getting the fresh roasted chilies. And you definitely don't want to cook the poached chicken in there very long. So we just kind of going to let it bubble, simmer and bubble. And now I think we're just about ready to add the green chilies, which are cut in those rounds, the 1/2 inch rounds or 3/4 inch wide rounds. Stir them in really well, and now you can stop at this point if you wish to or need to. And this could be like a vegetarian green chili sauce, and you'd use vegetable stock, of course, instead of chicken broth. And you could freeze it at this point, or you could let it set for a day or two in the refrigerator. You only want to add the chicken actually just about 5 minutes or so before the sauce is finished, because if you add the chicken too early, it'll become kind of like chicken thread. It just dissolves and it's not so good. It's better to have chunks of chicken. And this is a whole chicken it's created from a whole chicken that has been poached in chicken stock, so it gives it really, really good flavor. And then you cool it in the stock or the broth so that it reabsorbs the flavors. It's so much better than dry old chicken. I like it. I like the whole chicken also better than using just chicken breast. And you just want to simmer it together, get the flavors really well combined. And it can be frozen at this point too. So now we're ready to create an enchilada, and we're going to make New Mexico style enchiladas, which are flat. They're not rolled. We add just a little bit of the sauce. We do not par fry the corn tortilla. It's just a freshly made corn tortilla. And some people do par fry, and if you do, you add an extra 25 to 50 calories of retained fat grams or calories. So here we're just adding a little more sauce, and then we're going to add to that some grated cheese, and this is a mixture of Monterey Jack and cheddar, and then just a little more chopped fresh onion. In other words, more meaning that we also have some onion in the sauce, but I like it both places personally. And you can make them as tall as you wish. We're using now 2 tortillas, which is pretty much a standard serving. Some hearty eaters will want 3. And put enough sauce over the top end tortilla to really kind of hide you want to hide the appearance of the tortilla. And then we're going to add a little more cheese. And you'll see how the sauce is relatively thin. That's a really good thing, because you want the sauce to be absorbed into the tortilla. If it were thicker, it wouldn't absorb as well. It'd just sort of sit there. So by experience, I've learned that this is kind of the ideal. And I'm kind of generous with the cheese. You can add it to suit yourself, and you can use other types of cheese if you'd prefer, such as anything that's easy melting, like Munster, provolone, smoked Gouda. All of those will change the end flavor. And once it's compiled, you're going to place it in a preheated 350, 375 degree oven. Now, you can get the enchilada to this point up to 2 hours ahead of time before you go ahead and let it bake. And now we're ready. The cheese is melted, and just like magic, and we're ready to garnish it. I think it looks a little naked this way, so I like to garnish it with heat-resistant lettuce, or you could use cabbage. I use rinsed and dried and romaine that's cut in like 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch wide ribbons, and I place that down first. And then if you wish to, you can add a frill of a fancier lettuce, such as the mesclun greens or red leaf lettuce. You don't have to do that. I usually do, just to give it a little more color contrast. And I think it dresses it or dulls it up just a little bit. And here we're just using the mesclun, which is a combination of oak leaf lettuce and some red lettuce and just different kinds, but they're very, very fussy and finicky. It doesn't handle the heat well at all, so you need that buffer of the romaine. And it's an interesting point about romaine lettuce. It's almost as healthy as spinach. Did you know that? And it is almost as heat resistant as iceberg, so it's a really good trade-off for iceberg, I think. I think it's more attractive as well. And then we are adding a dollop of sour cream in the very center, and we're going to add these are Roma tomato wedges. You can use any kind of tomato. Place them at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9, and 12. And then we're going to give it the magic sprinkle of Caribe or Caribe chili, which is the chili of the conquistadores that they got from the island of Santo Domingo in the Caribbean. That's where the Caribe name came from. And I hope you enjoy making green chili chicken enchiladas.